Hi, I'm Sabe Connor, the director of Holywell Care Group. I'm just going to talk about my background and how I came to England, because I wasn't born in England. I actually come from Zimbabwe, from a little town called Mutare, where I lived with my family, my mom and dad and my brothers and sisters. We left Zimbabwe after I got married. I left Zimbabwe with my husband to come to England because of the difficulties the country was facing. When I came to England, I was looking around for work and realized that because I didn't have a formal qualification, that was very difficult. So I had to go back to school. So I went to the adult college, where I was accepted to do an access course to higher education. I completed my access course within 12 months. You had a choice to do it within 2 years or you could do it within 12 months. At that time, as I mentioned, I was married. I had my daughter, who was 3 years old, and I was pregnant with my son. 6 weeks after landing in the UK, I gave birth to my son. So I went back to school with a little 1-month-old baby and began my access course, my course to higher education. What I found in that classroom was I was one of the older people. Many of them were young teenagers who were probably 18, 19, 21. And there was at least maybe 45 people within the classroom. When we had to hand in our first assignment, that dropped drastically. By the time we actually completed the final, there was at least 6 people left. I was accepted at Lancaster University to complete a bachelor's degree in social work. I completed my bachelor's degree and began working as a social worker. I worked for Cumbria County Council and Lancashire County Council. Whilst I was doing that, I began to think about my future with 2 young children. I'm now in my 30s. What are the prospects of me getting into management? Because I felt that that's where I belonged. I just didn't want to just be a social worker working 9 to 5. I needed more, and I felt that I could do more. So I then started thinking about, what if I went into business on my own? How would that work? But to me, that didn't. I was open to anything, whatever it was. But after working as a social worker and seeing what other people were doing as I was going about my business, I thought this, I could be a provider, and so I then began to research this and wrote my business plan. Once I had my business plan, I still didn't know where I was going to get collateral, how I was going to get collateral. And so one day, as I was walking along the beach in Morecambe, I stopped to look at an estate agent, and in there I saw this small care home for sale. And it wasn't that expensive, I suppose, because it was only for 6 people, and it wasn't in the best of conditions, the building itself. So I read up on about the care home, and I spoke to my husband about it, and I said, I'm interested in doing this. And he said, he was very supportive. He said, fine, let's speak to the bank. So we spoke to the bank, and the bank said, okay, what do you have in collateral? We didn't have much, but we had our house, which is what we had bought the house. So we were able to use our house as collateral in order to get the funding to purchase this care home, once we had the accounting figures of the care home and so on. And that was the beginning of my story. once I bought the place and I went into the care home for the first day, it's a very, very strange feeling, because everything now is on your head, everything. So I wasn't too daunted by that, but I do remember my first day walking into that place, and I was just speaking to the few staff that were on duty, speaking to the clients, and I observed the behavior of the staff, which I didn't like. And so I thought, right, I need to speak to them and say, okay, what you did yesterday is in the past, but how do we move forward from here? Because this is not the way in which I would want to work. Because remember, unlike most people in the care business, they say I started off as a cleaner and then I went off to do care work and then I did management. I didn't do that. I came straight from Africa, went to university, so my learning was from actually what I had read, what the policies were saying, what the law says, how we should behave and how we should do things. So that's where I was coming from. So now when I'm seeing these behaviors, I'm thinking, well, that's not in line. And I just imagined CQC, who are the regulators, coming in and questioning me. So I thought, no, let's say, okay, what you did yesterday is in the past. How do we move forward from that? But then I was surprised that I was met with a lot of hostility by the staff, the manager in particular, who said, no, everything's fine, you just don't understand. This is the way in which we work. So I had to assert myself. What was even more surprising was how the manager tried to undermine me to go and speak to my husband. So I said, no, I actually own the place, not him. I own it, so you have to speak to me. So that didn't last long, because within 24 hours, the whole staff team were gone, except for 2 members of staff. There was the lady who did the cleaning, and there was another support worker. They stayed with me, and they're still with me today. So once they left, I was now left with a care home, no manager, no staff. But I didn't panic. I just took the bull by the horns and just said, right, this is where we are. So it didn't give me much chance to have a proper handover by the staff. So I had to rely on documents that were in the home. It was only 6 clients. So for me, I wasn't fazed. I just thought, well, this is something I can manage quite easily. So with that other worker, we began to change shifts. 2 of us caring for 6 people. So I immediately went to the job center, started recruiting. So within no time, I had a full staff team. And they were working the way in which I felt comfortable as a manager, as a responsible person managing the care home. When CQC came along, they gave us our first inspection. We were fine. We had a good rating. And the home continued to improve. I spoke to parents, I spoke to social workers, and as a result of the work that we were putting in, Holywell was awarded, we were given an award by LWDP, which is Lancashire Workforce Development Program, and their main role was supporting providers like myself to train up staff, to keep them up to date, ensuring that they are doing all the NVQ trainings that were available. There was funding for that. So we were quite well supported by the system as well. As long as the problem I had with, I think, the previous staff is, even though on the walls they had all these certificates, they were not practicing what they had been taught in the classroom. And that continues to be a challenge within the social care system. And as managers, as directors, our role and responsibility is to always be checking and double checking. And where there are weaknesses, you call the people in. Sometimes it's not about firing people, getting rid of people. It's all about retraining, identifying a weakness and a training need. Because sometimes people are genuinely good and they think that they're doing the right thing, but when that is pointed out to them in a training environment, hopefully they can learn and move on from that. So as a result of the work that we're doing at Holywell Home, my model was always not to be hands-on working in that one setting. I wanted to grow. So how do you do that? You need to employ the right people.